So now coming back, I would like to go to the progression of the violence and the different stages. When we see this violence from May 3rd, first was the mob violence phase. What happened? The first phase started in Churachandpur on May 3rd with the attack on Churachandpur town. And this violence spread like wildfire across More. And then, as this violence started spreading, then it spread to Kangpokpi district in Kuki dominated areas. At least 350 houses and more than 2,000 people were displaced from the Ikau north of Dolai Thabi, this area of Kangpokpi alone. Houses were burned and people were thrown out. Laimakhong and other those areas of Imphal West area, they were driven out. Churachandpur area, more than 10 to 15,000 people, at least 15,000 people were driven out. Conservative estimates, total it's much higher, but during May 3rd to May 5th, around estimated is calculations tell about 15,000 people were driven out. More, thousands more, at least 3,500 were driven out just from the More town alone, considering the relief camp numbers. These people who were driven out, the government was a bit unprepared for them. So most of them were forced to live under horrible conditions in relief camps, had to use plastics as for eating food. Food was not regular. More relief camp, there was no water and they had to use the Khujairok river nearby for drinking. In other parts of what to say in Churachandpur area and those areas, the camps which were arranged in mini secretariat and other parts of those areas, there was no water and pathetic sanitation condition for months. These kind of situations persisted, and even now life in relief camp is very difficult, extremely uncomfortable for them. And the Gorkhas actually wrote a letter on June 4th that more than 63,000 Gorkha population is there in Manipur. These Gorkhas had been systematically extorted, their livelihoods had been taken away, and at least from three major parts of three districts, there has been Gorkha exoduses. Under the pressure of, I would like you guys to note this term, sue and non-sue Kuki militants. The sue or suspension of operations, I would put as a solution and a closing argument, but this thing happened. This mob violence phase triggered a retaliation around the Imphal Valley. This retaliation started from around 8 p.m. from 3rd of May. And what happened was that during the retaliation phase, let us just be, there were horrible kinds of atrocities committed in both regions. So, we all know about the naked parrot, but we do not know about the woman, Maiti woman, who was abused repeatedly by multiple Kuki youth until she was conscious. A 37-year-old mother of three. Her story got buried. So there were innocent victims on both sides, and there were perpetrators of violence on both sides. However, any violence which happened in Imphal Valley, it happened as a retaliation. After that, what happened is that under these situations, the next phase, the violence until 5th or 6th, when the retaliation happened, the mob violence by the Kukis, which were closing into Imphal Valley, stopped on its tracks. Then it took the form of targeted killings of civilians and farmers, which have continued since then. Last 2 months, nearly from December 5th, around 28 at least people have been killed, innocent civilians, many of them horribly tortured before doing that by Kuki militants, and more than 13 security personnel have been injured. So this kind of targeted killing has been continued, but this phase started from around May 11th in Tronglaubi, where 4 police commandos were injured and a policeman were killed. Then May 12th, 10 Kuki MLAs from different groups, they stated a agreement. They stated that they wanted a separate administration. And from around May 15th, without taking the no objection certificate, NOC, from the state government, they started registering their organizations to the central organizations like CBSE and other schools and other things, which they started registering. Many of these schools included those schools where the missionary agenda was being propagated and local students were mentally harassed and tortured, like Saltbrook School, Young Learner School, Ray-Ban. Every one of them was in that list. So these were done through corrupt zonal educational officers, and the Kuki MLAs were directly involved in writing letters to them and putting pressure to them. funny thing is that Pauline Lial Haukip, these MLAs, the one who freed rioters in other things, then William David Hunching, I'll come to him later, all of these MLAs were given prime space in many national media outlets and allowed to peddle their propaganda like where in Karan Thapar in the where. Like these media outlets gave them prime spaces. And I would like to go through William David Hunching's interview on May 27th. There he actually declares civil war and he perfectly is willing to break up Bharat and go for that. And he actually goes on record in Where and national television and he does it with very little retort or
Yeah, you.
yeah, continue
Yes,
then.
go ahead. Go
Okay,
ahead.
so I'll just repeat the last line. So international media was actually present in Churachandpur from April 29th itself. So national media came much later, much later. So this matter, when we see these kind of things, the it is very clear that these kind of things were pre-planned. And all these 10 cookie MLAs have direct or indirect links to cookie terrorist groups. Like say Kim Neo Hanching, an MLA was photographed clearly in the poppy fields, opium fields while enjoying. Her husband, William David Hanching, is the head of Kuki People's Alliance, and Kuki People's Alliance has been allegedly involved in several kinds of terrorist activities. And all of these MLAs, they tried to portray themselves as a vote bank for the central government, and they even wrote a letter. The UKLF, an umbrella group of 17 Kuki UG groups, who wrote to Ram Madhav and Himanta Vishwa Sharma saying that we allowed you to win the 2017 and 2019 elections. So why are you not fulfilling our demands? These kind of things. Obviously, that letter was later denied by Himanta Vishwa Sharma that nothing like that happened, but they at least wrote a letter like that as a pressure strategy. Now, coming back to this situation, these 10 cookie MLAs declared these things. Then 27th April, 27th May, William David Hunching declared these kind of basically a civil war declaration, and on 13 villages were targeted, and it intended to cut off the supplies of food and essentials to the valley. And this strategy of starving people of essentials, food, and these medicine, these things have been continuing repeatedly. Heavily, trucks are being extorted, 25 to 30,000 rupees for each truck. This is a more than matlab 60, essential prices have gone up more than 30%, and many of the trucks have to pay more than double the extortion. Trucks carrying consumable goods are being charged 75 to 80,000 each truck there. So this extortion racket is creating a menace for economic recovery all over this. This extortion racket goes beyond Manipur, but the increase in the extortion racket due to this crisis is creating a major crisis there, and the involvement of cookie groups in these extortion rackets and cannot be rolled out. They are not the only ones doing it, but their role has been also visible in this racket. So the medicines worth 50 lakhs one time, medicinal equipment were burnt out, and these kind of horrible things were committed. Now these things, after that phase, this violence and attack, the town of Serau was put under siege. Serau, Sugnu, and other things at the edge of Imphal Valley, at the southeastern edge of Imphal Valley, was put under siege for a week. The freedom fighter S. Churachandji's wife, Ivetombi was burnt alive. A Gorkha person, 58-year-old, was allegedly burnt alive. Horrible kinds of atrocities were done. More also on May 3rd, according to Joydeep Mujumdar's ground report, a dozen people were killed, and old woman was locked up in a home and burnt alive. So these kind of horrible things happened, atrocities. Teenagers were kidnapped and shot. People were Khoirom Romario, he was burnt alive with a blowtorch. These kind of things. Totally. It's very difficult. Then Hey Guru Jam Robinson Singh, he was killed and his parents were called to mock and taunt them. Then these kind of stories also should come out. I mean, basically these things did not come out. Lintho Inambi and Hemanjit, these two teenagers murder. Then Chinkhe Nangba, two people were abducted, allegedly, according to what their family says, by a mob which included Kuki women, Kuki civilians, as well as Kuki militants. They were horribly tortured. Then they were made to stand on their knees, blindfolded, and shot behind the head. And one of them, and then equipment used for digging ground was used to pick apart their skull. So these kind of atrocities can happen, the horrible kind of things. So with these things, we have to understand that the violence which is going on, the cookies have achieved most of their objectives. They have put the Meiteis in a stranglehold, and even the other communities in there, including the non-indigenous people. The Meiteis now have 44% people living in less than 6% of habitable land. The land prices itself will drive them out of Manipur within the next 6 years, or within the next 20 years, unless these kind of sweeping legislative reforms do not come. Equal rights are not given to them, because currently even in Imphal Valley, if a Janajati person basically settles somewhere, it becomes tribal land. Basically it's gone. To buy it is very difficult. Like until 2022 you had to get a what to say, the DC's permission. Only with the DC's permission you could get it. So these kind of things were very difficult. So that is what created this kind of problem. I would just say, conclude with one thing: the suspension of operations agreement is one thing which has created a major problem. The suspension of operations agreement basically grants these cookie terrorists immunity, 25 cookie groups immunity from state and central government operations. However, they are not allowed to recruit, they are not allowed to do any kind of extortion, violence, or these kind of activities, and they are supposed to stay in designated camps, and they are supposed to keep their weapons in a double locking system. However, and they are paid a salary of around five. Previously, it was 5,000 rupees. Now it's supposed to be around 6,000 rupees from our taxpayer money per month. Now, each and every terms of this have been violated dozens of times, at least. It's with sickening frequency. Murders, extortion, attack on water supplies of villages like Kurkul and other areas. They blew out pipes supplying water to villages, creating major problems, those kind of things. So all kinds of forms of, all possible forms of is crimes against humanity which can be seen, this has been done. However, the government has not yet removed this SU agreement. Why? Because of two reasons. One is the Shiliguri corridor which we have there. The alternative to it is being created, something known as the Kaladan multimodal project, 3,200 crore thing. Now this Kaladan multimodal project is under threat. The Arakan army and the Chin Kuki and the Kachin and these alliances which the civil war currently is going in Burma, these coalitions are actually attacking these things and trying to attacking the junta, and our investments there, as well as the More part, is under threat, our future trade routes. So this is what has created a major problem. And I would also like to add one thing before that. This blocking of this More region had been going on since 2016. Hundreds of illegal villages like Haulenfai, Minao, Molcham, Yoldam, Sahe, Lianfai, all along in strategic locations, they had been installed and they had been filled with combat veterans from Burma for years. This was a very well planned thing to block off our Act East policy and use it as a bargaining chip against the government. So, without a huge amount of national pressure, we cannot expect very stern action against them. But this thing can affect our future geopolitical interests and our national ambitions too, what the cookies are playing with. And just for a thing, they had approached all kinds of foreign nations, put our military details, like in a letter to Israel on 30th of June, they published every single detail of our military officials who were on duty. They called our state as a fascist state and called the people as a genocidal people, and all kinds of horrible kind of allegations they had put. Then they had also approached Olaf Scholz. Then they had in Germany to intervene. They had also approached the Khalistanis. They had also approached Pakistanis, had also come out in their support. So all kinds of anti-national forces they have hired their services to. So this matter, it is an extremely serious thing. And regarding the religious matter, I would finally say 393 temples and Divya sites have been desecrated. Thanjing, the divine home of Ibudu, Thanjing and Mahadev, that place has been desecrated thrice with crosses, repeatedly. And the third time, there was a videographic evidence of pastor being present, accompanied by militants, armed with AK-47 and other things. So I would just say one thing: let us have a lot of concern for this and pressurize our leaders, because civilians should not be are not supposed to pay taxes to foreign terrorists and face artillery. in a country without any repercussion and be paid from our taxpayer money, these terrorists. Thank you.